Hello, Chameleon Academy. Today we're going to be talking about grasshoppers as a feeder insect for chameleons. And the reason why we look into grasshoppers is because most of the things that we feed chameleons, crickets, roaches, superworms, these are all nocturnal, and so we know that chameleons wouldn't eat those in the wild. They've been doing great so far on crickets and such, but if we are going to give our chameleons the absolute best nutrition, we're going to start finding answers in giving more natural feeder items, and grasshoppers are a great example of this. Dean Missimer is going to be joining me here on the podcast, and we're going to be talking about his research into what a chameleon's natural diet is and how he is starting up a business that breeds insects that are more like what chameleons would eat in the wild. So, please join me in welcoming Dean Missimer to the Chameleon Academy podcast, and let's get right into the interview. Hello, Chameleon Wranglers. I am here with Dean Missimer, and we're going to be talking about grasshoppers. Welcome, Dean.
Hello. My name is Dean Missimer. I guess I'll be talking about grasshoppers today.
Yeah, it's pretty much new to us in the United States. In Europe, they've had locusts and grasshoppers for who knows how long. It's been a staple, but this is relatively new for us here. And I just want to introduce grasshoppers to my audience. And I'd like to, by the end of this episode, I'd love for us to feel comfortable that we could breed them ourselves and add them to our chameleon's diet. So let's just start off with the basics of what grasshoppers are available and what does it take to keep them?
Sure. Yeah, like you said, they're widely available in Europe and such. It's funny. The first thing I tried to do when I was getting them as a feeder, it was back in maybe 2015 or 16. I saw them online and I tried to order them. And I realized, wait a minute, none of these are in the US. I can't get these in. So that led me to just go outside and catch them and breed them myself. So I've been doing that since about then. At first, it was just whatever was native to my area, which was at the time was the Bay Area of California. And then as I researched more, I found out that, well, the United States is a big place. We have a lot of species, and I just started asking people, catch, send me, whatever, and got a bunch of new stuff.
Okay.
So sort of how it happened was, I had actually a guy who helped me with that. So after breeding for a few years, maybe around 2018, I ran into a fellow named Kai. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
You might have seen him selling them around too. His name's Kai Fan.
Oh yeah, we are well. We know Kai.
Okay, yeah. I think he's pretty active in the groups and such. But anyway, he at the time was breeding like some roaches or something. I don't know. He had an interest in unique feeders, but that was his sort of thing. And he showed interest in my grasshoppers. He said, "Oh, that's kind of cool. Can I buy them for you?" And that was the first time someone asked me to to buy grasshoppers for me, because I didn't have a presence online. I just did it for myself and my girlfriend and our pets because I thought they were such a good feeder. And so I said, sure. And basically, I would breed some extra and then sell them to him. And then he was sort of testing the waters in the reptile community to see if there's an interest in them. So he went around selling them at the time. And he said, hey, people really like them. They seem great especially for arboreal things like chameleons and tree monitors and such. So he wanted to scale it up, and he saw like a business opportunity in it. So he basically asked me to breed more and to teach him how to breed them. And that's sort of how it all started. And he was the one who initially helped me get, since he had a lot of contacts in the reptile community, he had people catch them from all around the US. And so we could try them out. And so after testing all the species, So we found the best one. The best. Let's start with the best. The genus. Right? Genus.
Okay.
So these are the large bird-wing grasshoppers. And if you've ever bought grasshoppers from either one of us, you these are primarily what you'd be getting. So within this genus in the U.S., there are about 10 species. I want to say. There, every single one of them is a great feeder. However, there are a lot of differences in the life cycle. The most prolific one is called the American bird grasshopper. Its range is basically the entire southeastern quadrant of the United States. And huge grasshopper gets up to 3 inches, extremely prolific. We're talking about like 4 generations a year. And they do really great. They have some of the locust traits. They're not a complete locust, as in like they don't do like synchronized swarming or anything. But they have those traits that make them gregarious, where they do really well in large numbers. But we live in California. California has this thing called California Department of Agriculture, and
Yes.
they regulate what you can ship, sort of in from the state. So I didn't know this, back then when I was just kind of like taking everything and reading whatever I can find, but
Mhm.
they only allow California native species. So,
Okay.
and by allow, I mean you can't even they won't even issue a permit for anything outside of the state. So, American bird grasshopper at that point became out of the question for what I could keep breeding as a business. So, so, so what I ended up working with is currently the species I have are Schistocerca nitens, the gray bird grasshopper. Very common one. If you're in Southern California, you probably have seen this at some point. It's a really large gray grasshopper. And the other one I work with is Schistocerca lineata, the spotted bird grasshopper. It comes in a lot of colors. The green one, as you've seen, there's another big yellow one. There's kind of like brownish ones. But anyway, it's a nice species. The only problem is the hatch time. So, like I mentioned earlier, the American bird grasshopper is super prolific, 4 generations a year. It's like eggs hatch in 3 weeks. They're fully grown in 4 weeks.
Wow.
At really insane speed if you think about the growth. If you're someone who's grow like roaches or something, as you might know, it takes months, right, to grow them up to full size, like like especially something like 3 inches, like the grasshoppers. Let's say like a hisser. How long does it take for a hisser to grow? It's a long time, right? So
Oh.
grasshoppers, in terms of growth rate, any of the species will grow faster than like any kind of roach. The only issue is, like I was mentioning, the spotted bird grasshopper. That's the one I'm mainly working with here in California. And I have permits with them through California Department of Agriculture. Their eggs take a long time to hatch, right? So we're talking like maybe 6 months minimum.
Oh, okay.
In some cases, I've had them hatch as early as 3 months, but it's not consistent. And also, it's just in the wild, they are a 1 generation per year species. So it takes the entire year to complete their life cycle. Every year they hatch at the same time. They hatch in May, June, July, and then they'll mature and lay their eggs in the summer or the fall, and then they'll be dead by winter. And the eggs basically stay underground for the remainder of the year until the next, either late spring or early summer. So
Okay.
that's what we have to work with. Of course, I guess if you're in the eastern U.S., you can just get American bird grasshoppers in you. But I will not be able to provide them for you. And insects, they're in terms of laws and the technical laws, it's quite strict, and like that's sort of what I try to work under. So it's a little difficult, but I mean, like, if you go online and you look at like insect websites, they just kind of sell whatever, like regardless of legality or whatever. So, if you want to do other stuff that's not, technically legal, like do it at your own risk. That's what I'll say.
Well, we're going to go ahead and keep it above board here. We don't need to. I think just having one species is wonderful. But say if we got these from you, how would we set them up to keep them healthy, feed them, and well, eventually we'll get into breed them. But how would we set them up to keep them?
Okay. Actually, before we get there, there's a big one that I missed. There's a species.
Oh.
The USDA deregulated, I think in 2019, 3 species of grasshoppers: Melanoplis differentialis, Femerubrum, and Sanguinips. These are 3 they're called spur-throated grasshoppers. They're very common. They're throughout the entire U.S., massive range, and I suppose that's why they deregulated them. But so for those ones, you wouldn't need a permit at all. You can just kind of do whatever with them. And I do have the differentialis because they're only out of those 3, they're only ones that I consider largest to be useful for like a feeder, right? Because all of them are going to hatch at the same kind of like tiny size, but only the differentialis is getting like 2 inches minimum, like something you'd want if you have like a big, like if you want like a lot of the people who come asking me for grasshoppers are Parsons people, and they want the big ones, right? So anyway, back to your question. What do they need? Well, since I'm speaking to a chameleon audience, you're all in luck. You can keep them just like a chameleon. And that is part of why they're the perfect feeder, right? They are very much the native natural food of chameleons, right? You can look through, any of the chameleon diet studies of the wild, and grasshoppers will be a significant portion of them. There are some cases where it's not, like especially during the winter season when they're all dead, but for the most part, they are a very natural feeder, and you're going to keep them a similar way, unlike let's say roaches or superworms, which we are now talking about nocturnal burrowing insects that a chameleon would never encounter in its entire life. Behind me, you see a very barren screen cage. That's actually my chameleon Simon. Remember how I said how I was fumigating my house? Of course, I had to take out the plants. I couldn't take them all with me. It's like Schefflera and pothos and stuff. So I put them outside, and they did not survive the heat. I was not kind of expecting that. They're out there for a week, and I came back and they were burnt to a crisp. So after this podcast, I'll be heading over to the nursery and replacing those. But for now, he is he's not having a good time. Anyway, but we can just look back at it as an example. You can keep grasshoppers just like that. They need light. It's a diurnal type of insect, right? And they need to be able to climb. They're arboreal, and they need perches, right? They need perches because if you don't give them perches, you just have less surface area to work with. You're not going to be able to have as many grasshoppers. They're not going to have surfaces to molt upside down from and all that stuff. So, and you also need somewhere to put up their food, right? Their food is going to be leafy greens. So you can kind of like stick them up on things, but you do have to have surfaces to place them on.
When we're talking about perches, what kind of things would they want?
Literally anything. I don't like egg crate because it's not open. They can't go, in and out unless they're going like around the edges and stuff. I don't like that. So any like those ladder things will work. Just dowels, branches will work.
Does the screen walls of a screen cage count?
Yes, the wall. They will climb up and down the walls of a screen cage. You don't have to add anything on the sides. We're talking about sort of filling up the middle space. Something like a chicken wire, any sort of fencing, the gutter guard things, just anything like that will be good. And it'll give them somewhere to hang from, something that won't lock in humidity. Yeah.
And what kind of temperatures are we looking for?
Ambient temp doesn't matter too much. We're more concerned with the basking temp, right? We want to be able to give them a place to bask. And once again, not that different from chameleons. You're looking at 85 or whatever basking spot. And Yeah, if they need to warm up, they go under. If they don't want, if it's too hot for them, they'll back off. And
Okay.
even if the basking spot is not perfect, they'll just go to they hang upside down from the ceiling, go all the way to the light bulb if they need more heat. So it's pretty simple
Okay.
in that regard.
And how do we get them water?
Well, the good news is you don't need to do anything special to give them water. Their food is their water. Leafy greens all contain water,
Good.
and that will completely hydrate them. So you don't have to use anything, disgusting like water cubes or whatever. I
Okay.
never understood those things, by the way. The first time I saw them, I was like, I don't understand. Like, if this was like a long time ago, like early 2000s, they were being marketed for like crickets and roaches, and I thought even if it needed like the maximum amount of water or something, they just came in super dehydrated. You can go to the grocery store, buy this thing called lettuce. It's basically all water, and you don't have to deal with these crystals that get covered in like frass and just get nasty.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Anyway, my rant is over.
All right. Well, what do we feed them that's going to be nutritious?
Yes. So, first things first. When I ship these out, I ship them in with lettuce because that's the only thing that'll stay hydrated enough throughout the trip. But for long-term purposes, I wouldn't consider it a great food item because of the lack of nutrition in it. Really, you want to be seeing if your grocery store carries like a dandelion greens. Here in Southern California, you can just get them at Vaughn's. Whole Foods has them. I don't know about Sprouts. I haven't really been there, but a lot of places have that. The one
Now,
thing,
iceberg lettuce we know has nothing, but how about romaine
yes,
lettuce?
yeah, romaine lettuce is definitely better. As far as lettuces go, I do like romaine when I do want to hydrate them. But even if you're using romaine, I would recommend you rotate it with something else. I mean, regardless of any type, if it's like a lettuce is just in general like super watery and sort of low in nutrition. They're not terrible. In fact, they're fantastic for hydration. You just want to rotate it out with something like a
Okay.
dandelion, like a collard green, like a mustard green.
All right.
And I'll say a few things. Spinach, they don't really seem to like. There is a type of grasshopper that hosts on amaranths. They might like spinach because that's what that is. And I'm trying to get that grasshopper, but verdict's out because I'm I'm just I don't have a lot of time, but I
Okay.
do make several trips throughout the year to catch new species to try new stuff. But anyway,
Okay.
as far as the food question goes, your top tier, I would say dandelion, collards, mustards, and then in terms of hydration, romaine lettuce, green leaf lettuce. There's also there's also one thing. There's like red romaine and also red leaf lettuce, right? As opposed to the green ones.
Okay.
Those are fine too, but I find that the grasshoppers don't like them as much for some reason. If that's all there is, I'll just get those and they'll eat it and it's kind of fine. But you can tell they don't want to eat as much of it. But
Okay.
that's sort of those are the main points as far as food goes.
All right. So if we put them all in a cage and we'd like to get some breeding going, what else do we need to have in that cage to facilitate breeding?
Nothing. I mean, if you put the males and the females together, they can bask. They're gonna
Like
mate, and they're gonna.
dirt from where
Yes,
do they
yeah.
put their
Let's
eggs?
let's yeah. Let's get to that. The egg laying, right? So
Yeah.
there's a couple ways you can do it. You can just leave substrate all over the floor. They'll lay their eggs all over, and then the babies will hatch out. Or since I run a big operation, I mean it's not big, but bigger than like maybe someone just breeding just for their a couple animals, right? I have to be a little more organized. So what I do is I just have little containers like this, and then this is just like the species and date and stuff like that. But you can see there's some leftover sand and stuff in there. But The substrate can be anything. Each species has its own preferences, but in the wild, it's mainly they look for sandy, like a sandy substrate to lay their eggs in. So sand is always a good option. Cocoa fiber is a good option. Vermiculite's a good option. Any sort of substrate that's small and grainy. I mean, even if it's not, I've had them lay in sphagnum moss and they hatch before. That wasn't an accident.
Okay.
I was trying to feed my skink, and his tank has a ton of like, sphagnum. And one of the grasshoppers apparently survived and laid its eggs there because one day I woke up, there's like 100 baby grasshoppers in his cage. So they're not too picky about substrate.
Will we be able to see the eggs, or how will we know that the eggs have been laid?
No, you won't be able to see the eggs because they'll be in the substrate.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes they'll lay the eggs against the edge of the container and you'll see that. But for the most part, you're not going to see it. You may see them in the act of laying eggs, or you'll see holes that they've dug in with their butts. And yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
so we just have to wait for 6 months until they hatch?
yeah. I mean, it depends on the species. There are some that will hatch in 3 weeks, and they'll hatch some that hatch in 3 months, and some that, of course, hatch. It's like 6 months. So you have to know your species.
Which are the ones that you are sending out?
I have several, but like I mentioned earlier, so the graybird grasshopper, Schistosarca nitens,
Okay.
I actually went off them for a while because I only have so much space and I'm always testing new species. So they went out of the rotation. They got a little axed, but I just caught some more. Was it 2 days ago? The day before the storm hit, I was like, all right, these guys are going to get wiped out by the storm. Baby grasshoppers do not survive rainstorms, especially in these arid areas. So I just went down to a spot I know. I caught like 50 of them, came back. That's my new breeder group. And in a couple of months, those will be, the babies will be shipped out. But so I've got those guys, those hatch in about 3 weeks. And then the spotted bird grasshoppers, which is, the big green and yellow, these much more colorful ones. These are the ones that take 3 to 6 months to hatch. In
that's
either
what I
case,
have, correct?
Yes, that is what you have.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yes. Yeah. I will say though, those ones, even though the eggs take longer to hatch, they actually breed much sooner. The graybird grasshoppers,
Okay.
they can take a while. In some cases, if the conditions are perfect, they could start breeding in a month. But if they're not, they will wait out like 5 months, 5 months before they start breeding. They'll just chill there, and
Wow.
then and one of the reasons why I asked them out of the rotation is people will get them, and they're like, they're not doing anything, and then I tell them, hey, you got to be patient with these ones in particular. They can take a long time, but they're getting frustrated, whatever. So anyway,
But then all of a sudden, the cage will just be filled with babies?
Yes. I mean, if you pay attention to them, you'll see them mating. It's really easy to notice because the male mounts the female.
Yeah.
And if you're around them enough, you'll also see them laying eggs. They don't like to do it when people are around, but desperate times call for desperate measures. If you're around them enough, they'll just do it.
All right. So here's a big question that everybody eventually will be asking. How do I get grasshoppers out of the cage without all of the grasshoppers getting out of the cage?
Yes, good question. There are a few methods. Back in the day when my numbers were a little lower, I stocked the cages a little less. I never really went over 200 grasshoppers per cage. You didn't really need to do much. The screen cages, they're front opening. So if you have a light, like their heating light toward the back of the cage, when you open the door, when they jump, generally they're just going to jump to the light. So even if you open the cage to take some out and they start jumping around, generally they're not jumping out of the cage. Most of them are jumping that way. Unless you have a light behind you, then they'll jump right at you. But recently what I've done is there are these sort of cage circle contraptions that my friend makes with a 3D printer. It's just a little like a circle hole that you cut out a circle in the screen cage, and then
Mm-hmm.
you attach it there, and then it's just a small opening that you can cover up
Yep.
or open it to just stick. Just it's just big enough to stick your arm in to grab the grasshoppers, and they can jump around. They'll never really make it out that hole. So that's what I do now. His name is Cody. Cody. Actually, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's like Koepp. Cody Kopp, maybe. So if maybe if you wanna if you wanna get those, message him on social media. I think his Instagram name is Riser Ryzr or maybe Rizzr something like that. And yeah, if you want them, go give my friend business. I'm sure
Okay.
he'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
Go
Jordan, if
ahead.
you're getting
Sorry.
these from the California area, do they need a cool down period at the end of the year?
Yeah. So for the spotted bird grasshoppers, the cool down period definitely helps for the eggs. You don't need to. They'll still hatch at your normal room temperatures or whatever. But if you want to optimize it, if you want them to all sort of hatch out perfectly on the same day, yes, cooling helps. And what you do is you just stick them in the refrigerator for the winter period, which is 3 months. So any type of
Okay.
and this is actually most grasshoppers from the United States because we are for the most part a temperate country, except the sort of southern border-ish area. Most grasshoppers in the United States, they're going to require that winter cooling period to reproduce optimally. So you basically what you do is you take your eggs. If you have substrate all over the cage, you're gonna have to dig them all out. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. It's not the end of the world, but it's just a real pain. You don't want to do it. Anyway, you're gonna want to use a container like this if you do that, and that way they lay their eggs in here. You just stick this in the fridge for 3 months. You pull it out, they'll hatch.
Okay.
And
All
when you do that fridge thing, they will all hatch. Just be warned because they will all hatch on like literally the same day.
right. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow, I
I've
mean, how
had
long after taking them
I've
out of the
had
refrigerator?
yeah. If you after you take them out of the refrigerator, it depends on the temperature you keep them in, but you're looking at anywhere between 2 weeks and 1 month is the
Okay.
timeline. If it's particularly cool outside, maybe let's say your house is like in the 60s, yeah, maybe it'll take like 2 months still after that. But whatever the case, just be warned, they'll all hatch at once. So if you have a ton of eggs in there and you're like there's so many that you're like seeing them all over the side, just be ready because I've had like 10,000 hatch in one day and I couldn't really do anything with
Wow.
it. Yeah, it was in the middle of when I was doing my master's and I had a full-time internship in addition to classes. So I just had no time to it's like I had 10,000 grasshoppers, there's potentially, a lot of sales, but I couldn't do it. I didn't have time to sell them, they just kind of
Hmm.
what I did, I just threw 50 mantises in the cages and they had their fun.
All right. So how long should we expect these grasshoppers to live?
Yeah, so grasshoppers, once again, depend on the species. But if we're talking about the large bird grasshoppers, it's about a year.
Okay.
Mating will shorten their lifespan, but they will live up to a year.
All right.
Especially the green ones, since that type in particular mates really aggressively, and it's a lot of wear and tear, and then they'll end up dying in a few months. But if
Okay.
the graybirds, the females will last a long time. The females are much bigger than males. They're I think about twice the size, if not more. So they don't take much damage when the males mate them, and they can like kick them off whenever they want. So they last a
Hmm.
long time. I had one. The longest one I had lived was 15 months for a grasshopper, which is a long time if you think about like a seasonal insect. You wouldn't expect something like that.
Yeah. So if somebody was interested in getting started, how could they get a hold of you and get grasshoppers from you?
I plan to launch a new website. The website will actually be called feedmychameleon.com. This will be a website that specializes in chameleon feeders. It's a regular website. You can order it as if you would on any other website. I spent a lot of time over the past year or so researching chameleon diets, going through the scientific literature. I'm in the process of making a lot of charts, sort of graphs out of the data in those studies. I have a few of them ready, and then the focus of the feeders on the website will be on the sort of the 6 orders. When you look at any chameleon study, no matter which study you look at, about 90 to 99% of the diet will fall within the same 6 orders of insects, and that's Orthoptera, grasshoppers and such. Also, crickets and katydids are in there too, but chameleons don't encounter crickets because they're nocturnal and they're on the ground and whatnot. So it's generally grasshoppers and potentially katydids. The thing is, the studies a lot of times don't differentiate between grasshoppers and katydids, so you can't really tell. But the ones that do definitely mention grasshoppers primarily. But I do breed katydids too, so if you want those, you can come get them too.
Okay.
Anyway, and if you're on video, I have this. This is what the katydids look like. This one is one of the ones deregulated by USDA, so no need for permit or anything. They're even easier than grasshoppers. The only problem is they're kind of slow. They're not very prolific. So there's those. So I mentioned Orthoptera. The next one is Diptera, flies. Right, this is obvious. Chameleons eat a lot of flies in the wild. The next one is Hymenoptera. There's a guy called like Peter Netches who's like always raving about these, but I don't know, man. I'm not really a fan of stinging insects in my house. So these will not be available on the website. I'm sorry for anyone who wanted those.
These are bees?
Yeah, bees, wasps, and ants. I think the most consumed ones in the studies that I looked at were bees, but they also do eat small wasps and I guess ants in some cases. But I'm not that comfortable with that. I know they eat it in the wild.
We are all familiar with that Peter Netches guy.
Yes. So those will not be available. Maybe if you know a beekeeper, you can go try it out on your own. That's not my thing. And then so we got 3. The next one is a Hemiptera. Hemiptera is true bugs and cicadas. So mainly stink bugs. Stink bugs in many studies were a huge part of their diet. The only issue with that is I would do stink bugs if they didn't literally stink. You know what I mean? I've tried and they just stink. So I'm not sure. So what I'm doing right now is I'm thinking of doing a little bit of substitution, doing a little bit of this was actually ideas, a little bit of what I got from you last time we talked. You mentioned the green banana roaches. They are similar in size and shape and stature, composition, everything. They're really similar. So I'm thinking of offering those.
Okay.
And I just got a batch of them, so I heard they're easy to breed or whatever because of roaches. But the only thing is roaches technically are not a part of the chameleon's diet. You can look at any study, like every single one will show like 0 roaches consumed just because they don't encounter them. But as long as it's sort of like a lean type, especially one that can fly, I think those are great. And from what I've heard, green banana roaches get a great feed response. So I do like that.
Do.
About that. Everything on my website, I want to sell something that chameleons are going to respond well to. Something I've noticed is that dubia roaches are just not readily accepted at all. In some cases they will, but in many cases they will not. And I know they're really easy to breed, but they're just not. They're not optimal in my opinion because
some like them, some don't.
Yeah, they're so unpalatable, and I don't know if it's because it's just not like a sort of like a recognizable shape as something they would typically eat in the wild, or or they literally don't like the taste. But I don't really want to feed my chameleon something.
Figure out the pattern.
Yeah, I don't want to feed my chameleon something that he doesn't want to eat. I consider that some type of stress because there are so many insects that he would love to eat. So I stick to those. So we got Orthoptera, Diptera, the flies, Hymenoptera, the stinging insects, and Hemiptera, the true bugs, and of course cicadas. I looked into cicadas. The shortest life cycle is like 2 years. That's not going to happen. And then the next one is Coleoptera, beetles. So I'm going to offer those if I can. Here in Southern California, we get a ton of those green fig eater beetles.
Yeah,
and so I've every day they're in the yard. I
love those.
Yes, I've been grabbing them, and so we're gonna see what happens. They're laying their eggs right now, and if all goes well, they will be available next year as well. And the last one, of course, Lepidoptera, butterflies, moths, and their caterpillars. They're mainly eaten in their caterpillar form, and usually it's just in the spring. In most studies, for the most part of the year, the chameleons are not eating much of them, but there'll be like spring or summer, like whatever the season for the caterpillars in that area are, they'll just gorge on them. So that's something I'll be. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Definitely silkworms, because I think silkworms are just fantastic feeder. They're really easy, except for actually, well, in some cases people have trouble keeping them alive. Especially when feeding them leaf. But in my experience, if you're struggling with that, just use the chow, and then they won't die as much. So those, and I'm also just kind of catching random stuff, see how the caterpillars do, and if it turns out to be a good one, I'll go through all the permitting or whatever is needed, and I'll offer those on the website too. But all that being said, mainly this is primarily what I am focused on is grasshoppers, because I think they're such a great feeder. And not only that, they're just not available anywhere in the US. In the US, they're very unavailable. So I would like to, feel that niche. And but anyway, my website will be focused on what I consider to be the best feeders for chameleons, and I'll also have all the charts, all my explanations of why I think such and such.
That sounds like a great idea, and you have some pretty exciting feeders there to make available. So I'm looking forward to checking this out.
All the social media pages are up at Feed My Chameleon, and please follow all socials. And of course the website, feedmychameleon.com. I hope the availability is good, because in the past, I have been selling out instantly. Like I'll post grasshoppers just in stock, and like within an hour, they just sell out. So it's rough.
Okay. So we need to be on our toes. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the chameleon community with?
I'll be working a lot more on this the feeder research stuff. I actually made a post a while back in the chameleon forums on my initial thoughts on it. Sort of what did I title it? Let me see. Just rethinking sort of staple foods, right? Because there are staple food charts that mention like snails and phasmids and a bunch of other things, and I had a lot of questions about these. So I implore you to go ahead and check out my digging into the research on all these, and my thoughts on what sort of the best feeders for chameleons are. There's quite a lot to go through, especially with the feeder industry the way it is today. It's mostly focused on nocturnal and burrowing insects, because these are just what's easy to breed, right?
All right then, Dean, I want to thank you very much for coming on and sharing this with us. And I'm going to be trying the grasshoppers because I'm excited about doing this myself. So wish us all luck.
Yeah. So. I hope you're able to find success with them. If not, honestly, when I have more katydids available, they are easier. It's just that they're not as prolific. The thing is,
I would love to try katydids.
They're primarily a nocturnal insect. There are some that are active during the day too. They're active during the day and nights, but the what makes them easier is you don't need lights. It's the same sort of arboreal setup, right? But you don't need lights, and you don't need heat. Actually, heat will like straight up kill them, so don't do that.
How much noise do they make?
They're not as loud as crickets. But they do. The males chirp, and the chirping it happens more often at night, and it also happen if you make a loud noise.
Okay.
Especially with these angewings. I don't know, I never really figured this out. But they'll make a noise when ruffle paper or something. I figured it's either one because they're using that noise as a cover. So now's my opportunity to chirp at the females because there's another sound that won't reveal my location to like a predator or something. So either that or they hear the sound, they think it's like another chirp, and they're trying to like compete with it. Like, hey, listen to me, bro. My my chirp is better. I'm not sure, but there's that. And the other thing is the katydids don't need substrate, so they don't need light. They don't need substrate. They'll lay their eggs. Just what I do is I give them little sticks, like little dowels.
Okay.
And they'll lay their eggs along that. If they don't have that, they'll just lay their eggs, on the cage or on the ground, whatever, and then you can just pick them up. You can't do that with grasshoppers because if they don't lay their eggs in the substrate, they'll just immediately dry up and desiccate when exposed to the air.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, as soon as they're available, I'd love to try katydids because I tell you, when my chameleons see a katydid, they are running over to me to snag that thing. They just love those big green leafy things. So, sign me up for that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of feed response, nothing beats them from what I've seen. They are like the king.
Yeah, they're incredible. So, all right then.
Wait, before you go, since I've got to use this platform to ask if anyone, you have some species in your area and you think, oh, this would make a great feeder, let me know because I'm always looking to expand the species in my collection, and I'm always looking to find, what are the best options out there. Right, this is all very new, so it's going to take a lot of trial and error and testing new species and such until we find the best ones. It's an exciting time.
Oh yeah. I love where we're going with this. So, all right. Thank you very much for coming on, and we will follow you closely.
So this is an example of us in the community stepping out and saying, how can we make chameleon husbandry better? I know if we use the measuring stick that they live longer in captivity than they do in the wild, then, well, we're done with chameleon husbandry. We've been done for 20 some years? But if we take our mission seriously, that we are here to provide the absolute best life for our chameleons, which I believe is our responsibility, then we will continually be working to move chameleon husbandry forward. And the people that we are going to depend upon to move husbandry forward is us. And so if you have a specific aspect of chameleon husbandry that you would like to study and help move forward, like Dean has, please embrace that and run with it. I would love to be here 5 years from now talking about how things have changed once again. And that change is going to come from us in the chameleon herpetoculture community. Thank you very much for joining Dean and me here today. And if you would like to learn more about what the Chameleon Academy has to offer as far as chameleon husbandry resources, I invite you to go to chameleonacademy.com and sign up for the monthly newsletter. And in there, you're going to get a monthly update as to what is new and what is going on. This is Bill Strand signing off, and I'll see you next time.